Noah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Dana. Thanks everyone for being here. Time is your attention is your most valuable resource. And I appreciate you giving your attention to this topic. And we hope to deliver value to you so you can take that back and improve your 23 strategy. Many people mentioned that acquisition was a priority. Some said retention was a priority. Sam said, how do I choose? We're going to focus a lot in on retention and re-engagement. However, I did include some tidbits on how to use your retention learnings to apply to acquisition. So a little seed for what we'll get to at the end. But as Dana said, my name is Noah Barnett. I am the VP of Marketing at Feathr. We are the nonprofit marketing platform designed and purpose-built to help nonprofits unlock more time, more results, and ultimately more confidence by allowing you to have ROI reporting at the campaign level, not just the channel level, which is hugely differentiated and something that a lot of our clients feel valuable about. A lot of the insights I'm going to share with you today are not just my own, but we have the Feathr flock is about 130 people, and we have 1,300 nonprofits that we serve. So these learnings are coming from the work we do in partnership with these organizations and the learnings that we're gleaning from those. But let's go ahead and dig in. So the topic today is how to re-engage audiences that interacted with you during Giving Tuesday and year end. And I want to start by taking kind of a step back, because when we ask this question, one thing that I've seen over the past 15 years doing nonprofit marketing and digital fundraising and working along both in and outside of nonprofits is that when we answer this question, we typically answer it not with marketing, but with magic. And what I mean by that is this: the typical playbook for re-engagement, or the typical playbook just for fundraising and marketing in general, usually fits into one of three buckets. You either have the nothing strategy, we're not going to do anything and just hope for the best. It's the everything strategy, which is like, hey, we're going to throw everything at the wall. We're going to do TikTok. We're going to do telethons. We're going to do billboards. We're going to do direct mail, more email, maybe even try some SMS in there, some digital ads. We just want to cover our bases, but we're focusing a lot on the ings of marketing, not the marketing, which is something we'll talk about. The third bucket that we see people fall into is the ad hoc, which is like, hey, this year we're going to try more email. Last year we tried ads, but it didn't really work. This year we're going to try TikTok just to see what happens. So it's kind of this like what I call ad hoc, or even like the board member strategy, which is like, hey, we walk into a board meeting saying, hey, we need to focus, and we walk out with 20 more ideas of things we need to go out and try. But we do that to ourselves as well, because our eyes are bigger than what we should be focusing on. And ultimately, all three of these playbooks are what I call unreliable magic. So if we're trying to truly re-engage our donors from last year and advance the impact we're having, we need something different. We need a growth playbook. And so the framework I'm going to share with you today is based on this idea of a growth playbook, which it starts with your audience and stays practical. Like, what is our audience doing? How are we engaging? What content and channels should we use to do that? It's also responsive. It's not linear, like, hey, we did this effort and we got this results, but rather it's responsive in that you're doing things to get feedback, you're experimenting, you're assuming you don't know the answer, but you're doing things to be able to learn from the audience and then come back. You know, there was already a question in the chat that said, hey, how much ad frequency is what was it? Would love to hear Noah's feedback on advertising frequency for the best results without driving people nuts. We've in the framing of the question, no offense to the person that asked it, Caroline, we are already making decisions for our audience. We're already deciding that there should be a frequency cap that we should know, because we would be driving people nuts if we increase the frequency. Just the framing of the question is this linear, like trying to be predictive, not responsive. The third thing about a growth playbook is it should be measurable. And one thing that we try to encourage people, our clients here at Feathr, to do is look at measurability at a audience level or a campaign level, not a channel level. So making statements like, we did Facebook ads and it didn't work, is not as helpful as we chose this segment of people that visit our website. We ran this campaign by sending emails, targeting them with Facebook ads, and that campaign and that content and channels we chose to target them did or did not work, or here's what worked and here's what didn't. Now let's adjust back to that. If we measure it just on single channels and not audience campaigns driven by audience, we can get really like lost. And so the growth playbook is practical, responsive, and measurable. And I've come to call this what I refer to as purposeful marketing. And so I have a framework I'm going to share, and then we're going to walk through the framework and how it applies to re-engaging segments that either gave to you last year or during year end or not. So let's show you that framework here. So like I said, we call this the purposeful marketing framework. I'm a consultant at heart. Dan and I have been on a few events, and I always go like, here's a framework I've drawn on my notepad. So if you're not a framework person, there's still some learnings here. But what I love about frameworks is it allows you to apply this learning, not in a single use case, but as a way to think about different use cases. So yes, we're talking about re-engaging end of year donors, but you could also apply this framework to prospective donors or longtime donors or donors that didn't give to you last year, but gave to you in 2021. It could be a framework we use for new donor cultivation. Like when a donor gives, how do we cultivate them? So the framework is applicable beyond the context of today's session. And so take that with you when we go, and we'll provide the slides afterwards as well.
And I love, Veronica was asking, does your content pertain to organizations in Canada?
I would assume so, yeah, because the framework too is channel agnostic and tool agnostic. It's just an approach that you would want to take in how you think about both identifying and then cultivating audiences to a specific action. So yeah, I would definitely say it would be.
Also half Canadian here. Fun fact.
Hey? Okay, we digress. It should be applicable, but give us feedback. Maybe we say something you're like, this doesn't make any sense in the Canadian context. That would be a learning for me, and I would love that feedback at the end. So the first part of the purposeful marketing framework is that you have to identify who you're targeting, not what channels you're going to use. This is contrarian to a lot of the ways traditional marketers and fundraisers were taught, especially if you've been in fundraising and in nonprofit work for a while, where the direct response approach thought channel first and audience second. So it says, hey, we're going to use the mail to target this audience, but it was still isolated to a single channel, and you were measuring results within this. With the purposeful marketing framework, we're saying, no, you need to first start with your audience and then choose the content and the channels that you will use to cultivate that audience based on what you know about them. So the first step is always to identify who you're targeting. In this case, for us on this call, we are going to be focused in on people that gave to us at the end of last year. So end of year donors would be who we're going to focus. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to understand what we know about that audience or community. And I frame this in twofold. One is context and the other is intent. Now, both these words can be like, what the hell does that mean? Like, am I allowed to curse on this? I didn't ask that ahead of time. Sorry about that. Like, what the heck does that mean? The context of your relationship with that audience means what do they expect the relationship? If I ask them what their relationship with you is, that would be context. So it'd be, I gave to this organization at year end. I've been giving to this organization for 4 years. I love supporting their adoption programs, or I love supporting their advocacy or animal rights programs. So it's context is what would the supporter agree with that they believe the relationship is. Intent has to do with what are they showing through actions. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit to a different context, which would be Netflix. So when I go in and watch a documentary, I'm not only saying I want to watch a documentary, I like the category of documentaries, Netflix has documentaries, but I'm also saying I want to watch a documentary right now about rock climbing. And that timing activity of that I'm currently in front of Netflix watching a documentary, or I watched a documentary last night and I might want to watch another one on Friday night, would be the intent. I'm showing intent to engage or intent to take an action. So for example, if you're end of year donors, you might have different, or the context might be the same, that they gave to your end of year campaign, but the intent might be different or varied. So if you had end of year donors that have engaged with you, let's say they visited your website or engaged with an email or maybe they watched a video, thank you video you sent them at the beginning of this year. They have different intent than the audience of end of year donors that haven't engaged with you in 23. And that intent is really important just as much as the context of that, of the segment is. So context and intent, understanding those two things are going to enable us to then be able to cultivate engagement, which is where we tend to focus a lot of time. We're like, okay, we need to do more email. We need to do this. But if we don't understand the segment we're targeting first, we don't know what content and channels to use. Like if you were an end of year donor and I don't use that context, I might just send you, hey, here's what our programs are. But it's like they just gave to you at end of year. They have that story that you set up for them. So what content should I be using now to cultivate re-engagement? Because I know that they engaged with this. If I use intent as well, I know that they watched our year in review video. That might be helpful for me of, again, what content I might choose. Or if they've engaged with us through email, but they've never visited or they've never really engaged with us through events or offline, I might choose digital channels to engage with them than offline channels, for example. So the understanding of the audience informs how we cultivate, which is channels and content. I'm going to pause there for a minute because I'm using a lot of new words or words in different contexts that I want to make sure we're good on. Any questions coming through so far? I can't see the questions.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I put in there, I loved the key question of what would the supporter agree the relationship is? I think that's such an interesting way to frame it that we don't often think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's where the audience first approach to the framework really leans in, because we all would agree. We want them to give more money. We want them to sign up for our monthly giving thing. Gosh, if they gave twice as much this year, that would be awesome. That's what we want out of the relationship. But understanding the context of their relationship with us is going to help us be that, responsive to cultivate that in the best way. The other thing I mentioned here was content. And sometimes content assumes like the copy or the words or the messaging or the offer, but it also could be the creative you use, like the pictures. If you're doing ads, it could be the visuals you're using because you want to use visuals they're familiar with to pull them through because they engage with your previous campaign. So content is really everything involved, from messaging to copy to creative. That's the content you would use to drive engagement. And then channels are email, social, mail, retargeting, search, etc. Last part of the framework, not last part of the framework, third part of the framework is you want to activate them to some sort of impact. So this could be signing up, etc. It could be giving a donation. It could be signing up for an advocacy program. It could be becoming a member, a monthly donor, a volunteer, buy tickets, etc. And then ultimately, this is a learning framework. So we want to make sure that we're learning. And ultimately, all of this enables us to do more good in the work that we're doing. So this is the framework. We're going to unpack this and apply this to last year's segment, but I wanted to lead with the framework, and then we're going to pull back the curtain and drive forward. Everyone ready to go? Any questions about this so far? Happy to answer them in the chat.
It's awesome. I think it's a great way to think about it. I think if one thing that I might be thinking about is how do we ensure, if we need to, how do we backtrack to make sure that we do have the right context and intent with different segments? I'm
not understanding. What do you mean by that?
So what would be the best way where, let's say maybe we don't have that data segmented right now.
Got it.
Is there a way to figure out what would be the best context and intent to cultivate them with, and then pick the right channel?
Yeah. And this goes back to, like, you have to work with what you have. And so you may not have access to a bunch of data, but you have something. And I think occasionally in the absence of, well, I'm not sure what's going to work, so I'm just going to do what I normally do. Like, we're going to create these ads and run a campaign. Is that we're not leaning into anything we have. And now if you have nothing, then that makes sense. Like, hey, we have to try something. We shouldn't do nothing until we have data, because you'll never get anything. But we do need to lean into something we have. And in this case, we're focusing on they gave to us at the end of year. So we at least know what vehicle, messaging, offer, program design that they came through. So at the bare minimum, you have that information. There's a bunch of other layered information you would have if you're tracking them like in a longer time horizon. But at least that, even just that, like they are end of year donors that gave to our campaign and our appeals in December or in November. That is helpful to now begin to cultivate them at the beginning of the year to drive more learnings, which you can ultimately reinfuse into your campaigns next time.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. The other thing here, again, we're going to focus today primarily on the engagement side of this. We're re-engaging it, but again, the framework applies to all stages of the relation of the donor journey with you. So if you don't know anything about them, that's still context. You know they have no relationship with you, and you can apply the same framework to acquisition. You can apply the same framework further down in smaller contexts, which might be like major gift cultivation. Or even corporate sponsorship cultivation as well. But we're going to focus on engagement because that's the priority for today's presentation. So the first step of the process was identify who, the context, and the intent. There are a few segments that we're going to focus in on. These are potential segments that you might have in your end of year donors. You're going to have donors that are net new donors. So that was the first time they've ever given to you. You're going to have returning donors. So they have given to you previously and they gave to you at year end. So those would be different segments because, again, the context of the relationship is different between those two. You also then could have donors by project or program. So if individuals could give to different types of programs within your organization, they may have given to your advocacy programs versus your adoption programs. And again, that context is helpful and may create individual segments that you may want to use as you can consider your re-engagement campaigns. And last but not least, something we're familiar with would be giving level. So if I gave you $20 or I gave you $20,000, my relationship and context with you are different based on the size of my investment. So that's another potential segment you want to identify to target and would want to break those apart. Some less obvious ones that still I wanted to surface to take into consideration is that looking at people that gave in 22 but didn't give to your end of year campaign. How are we re-engaging them? Donors that gave in 21, not 22. This was the Wordle acronym that was shared at the beginning of the session. LIBUNT last year, not this year. But if you just look at that isolation from 22, say, hey, we didn't have them give in 22, but they were committed donors in 21. How are we going to re-engage them in 23? The other would be website visitors. So people that came to your website, but they're not donors. So you can actually take website visitors tracking and your donor list and exclude donors from your website traffic as long as that you have the tracking set up. So this might not be possible for everyone. But if you have a fundraising platform or you're using a platform like Feathr to run your analytics for your website, you can do these types of segmentations. And then last but not least, active yet non-donors. So the thing I wanted to highlight here is that if there are other ways someone could interact with you during end of year. So let's say you're a museum. This one's more obvious. Like they bought a ticket to come to your museum, but they didn't donate. If you're an arts program, maybe they came to a program during year end, but they actually didn't donate. The less obvious ones would be that let's say you held a like virtual event in December that was like a year-end kickoff, or you had a video, or you had some sort of engagement. You could have people that engaged proactively in that, but they didn't give. And that's a segment that, again, if we look at the context of the relationship there, they might see themselves as active supporters or supporters of your cause. You might not categorize them as such because you're looking at a time horizon of did they give in the last 45 days of the year, but that might not be how they feel. And I think this is an underserved segment. So people that are engaged, not giving, is a great potential segment for you to cultivate at the beginning of the year. And I mentioned this already, but just a reminder, what you know about your community, what you know about these segments really should drive your campaigns, the content and the channels you're using. The second step of this framework is to cultivate. So what content are we going to choose and what channels are we going to choose to do that? Here's my little animated framework. Thanks, Emily, on my team for designing this. So it looks nice. Oops. So I'm going to share a few different types of campaigns or types of content and channels you could use to re-engage. And I'm going to highlight these through the lens of examples. So the first one I was going to mention is sending email. So email is a great channel that you can use to engage with your supporters. And so many of you are going to reinvest more in email in 2023. I'm trying to forget what year we're in. And email could be a channel that you choose to use. And then the content within that email would be the copy, the graphics. Are you using personal emails? Are you using designed emails? There's a lot of different like email optimizations that you could use, but really the channel would be email. The content there's a variety of use cases of ways that you could use content. Here's an example with Farm. I think it's Farm to Table. I can't see it on my screen. That Grace was running an event. Grace is an organization out of Gainesville that helps rescue individuals out of slavery. And they were inviting people to come to this. So they just use that context and that content to be able to, or that content and that channel to invite people. So email, everyone's using email, and it looks like people are going to be investing more in this. The second type of channel that you could use is what's called email mapping campaigns. So you can take a segment of your supporters and upload that to a digital advertising platform like Feathr, and be able to use that email list or that donor list from your fundraising platform or from your CRM as a targeting list for display advertising, like the Humane Society did here, where they used a list of previous supporters and they uploaded that list, and then they ran these ads to promote an event because they thought that offer would be the best offer to invite those people to. So this is using your email list or your donor list to run digital ads.
And this is super smart. This is where some of that retargeting, being seen everywhere, remaining top of mind comes into play. And so we see these ads, you see them all the time. And maybe even after this session, you're going to recognize them even more. But this is kind of where we're like, oh, I was just at, I think I shared when I was just at Dunkin' Donuts. How do they know? And then now I'm seeing a Dunkin' Donuts ad, or I didn't buy my Nest bedding and I was on their website and now I'm seeing their ad. Like these things that we think these other brands are doing, and it's like tons and tons and tons of dollars, is not tons and tons of dollars and totally possible. And you can do it. And I think that's what's the brilliance of this, is it's just putting those little nuggets, those nudges in other areas that somebody is already going to be doing. They're already going to a website. They're already going to social channels. Yeah. Rebecca is like, can you also do that directly through Facebook?
Next slide. So, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, you absolutely can. So not only through display advertising networks, which is what Dana just referenced, where if you're on Yahoo or you're on All Recipes or you're shopping for baby clothes or you're on the news website, you see these ads. You can also use the same type of segmentation. So you can say, hey, we want to target this audience with ads on Meta platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram. Even in Facebook Messenger, there's a lot of interesting ways that Facebook enables you to engage. The most simple and straightforward is you can say, hey, I want people on this list to see ads on Instagram and Facebook. There's a lot of complexity to that, but what we see here at Feathr is a lot of organizations aren't even doing that. And then they don't do that because of the complexity of the platform offerings. When at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I have a list of people that I'm going to send emails to. I also want them to see ads when they're on social media. That's what we're offering here. And again, that's something you can facilitate through a digital platform like Feathr, or there are opportunities to do this natively within the platforms. So the content here would be, we're using ads or visual CTAs, and the audience, the channel we're using is social paid ads. So we talked about email, we talked about display ads. Now we're talking about social ads, targeting an email list or a donor list. The fourth type of cultivation campaign that we recommend organizations use, and we've seen a lot of success on, is retargeting. And so what this does is this offers you to retarget ads to people that have visited your website, but you can also retarget ads to specific pages of your website and run exclusions. So this isn't an all or nothing. So if you had a lot of website traffic in Q4 you might say, well, I don't want to run it to everyone. I wanted to run it to a smaller segment, or I don't want to run it to people that come to our website for other reasons beyond who we're cultivating for fundraising. The technology is smart enough that you can actually segment out who you want to target based on pages they visited and the timing at which they visited those. So it could be, hey, we want to target people that visited our programs pages or came to our end of year video but didn't actually give. So they went to our year-end site, but they didn't end up giving because they didn't make it to the donation confirmation page. So it's like they visited this page, but they didn't visit this page. You can start stacking those types of segments in who you're targeting within your audience.
I also love this for the standpoint of you can get to know people more. Like if you have multiple programs in your organization, and let's say I had an interest in your mentorship program, then you could specifically be running ads that are mentorship for people who have visited the mentorship page versus if I went to something else, maybe it's about your water program, right? So that allows it to be a really custom experience for that person in their journey with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're using display retargeting ads, but the content you're choosing is different based on what you know about, what you understand about the community. It's so important. Too often, this goes back to the unreliable magic strategy. Is too often we say, hey, we're going to design 5 ads and we're going to run retargeting ads. Oh, shoot, they didn't work. Well, 2 challenges. You used one set of creative for everyone, and you targeted everyone that visits your website. Not bad, but then assuming those learnings mean retargeting ads don't work for us is kind of a false signal because you didn't customize the content and didn't customize who you were targeting. And so that's a channel first approach. Hey, we're going to do retargeting ads. But again, we're missing the point, which is the purposeful framework to identify who, and then cultivate, choose content, choose channels wisely. This was just another example of retargeting ads where we're serving ads based on specific programs. So Dana, this is another example of what you shared where someone went to look at tickets or read an email went to look at tickets or buy tickets, didn't, we're going to retarget them. So Pacific Theater ran these ads on the Los Angeles Times. Another example here is serving ads to visit specific pages on your website, which we talked about. And then once they visit those, we're going to show them specific ads. And in this case, it was to register for an event that was coming up. The other option for digital advertising or social advertising is actually doing like incomplete form submissions. So one thing that we all know is that we get really busy, and I've done it multiple times where I like leave something in my cart and then I leave. I showed intent to buy. I just didn't finish. If we categorize those people as like, shoot, we missed it, they didn't convert, we're missing an opportunity to not focus on conversions, but to focus on connections. And what that means is people came to your donation page, they went to donate, and they just didn't complete it. And the Sea Turtle Conservancy does a great job with this, is using that context and that intent to say, hey, did you forget something? The sea turtles are waiting. Finish your donation. They didn't say donate now. They didn't say, hey, here's our general ad. They're using that very specific segmented audience to say, hey, we're going to run this channel and we're going to use this channel and this content to bring them back to finish their donation, which is very different than make a donation. We like to finish things as humans. And ultimately, we tried to, or we expressed intent, and you're just leaning into that, assuming the best, that you're trying to be helpful to your audience to help them accomplish what they were trying to do. And you're being a good steward of that attention by increasing the number of connection points that you bring them back. You can also do this through email. So, hey, they did this or they visited this page. We are now going to send them an email. That's a smart email that says, hey, would you like to finish your donation? We know people get busy. We do too. Here's a link to come back and finish your donation type thing.
Rebecca's asking, how do you find out who these people are?
How do we actually target the people through the display ads?
Yeah.
So there's this is a little over my head technically, but the simple answer is that because you're being indexed when you visit websites through cookie tracking, whether it's in your browser or it's a cookie you opt into, there's shared cookies that are anonymous. So it's not that the Los Angeles Times knows that you are you. It just knows that you are someone that was tied to a profile that visited these certain websites. When we get further in the presentation, it gets a little bit more trippy. And this is where I think people think it's magic, and it's not. It's just good marketing, is that you can also target people with display ads based on their search intent on websites like Yahoo and Bing. So not Google ads, not like, hey, I'm putting an ad in context of the search, like, hey, donate to us because you searched for like nonprofit in Los Angeles to donate to. You're not capturing it at that, but you're saying if someone searched for statistics on child slavery in the world 2023. So let's say they're interested, they're doing research. They're like, wow, I just learned about this on the news, that child slavery is still at an all-time high. I'm going to Google about that, or I'm going to search for about that. You can actually use that search intent to run targeted ads to acquire new donors, which we'll get to. So a little preview. So it's based on anonymous, like tracking pixel conversations that are happening. Again, it's not that they know who you are. They just know that you were in a specific place, visited a specific website, engaged in certain behaviors.
It's fascinating. I think these are like the extra steps that I don't know the percentage of nonprofits that do it, but I say it's very few and far between, and it's really fascinating. It makes a really big difference. And I know you have some case studies to talk to that too.
Yeah. Oops. And I think the important here isn't that you need to do all of these. I'm just trying to reveal to us and to the group that there are other ways to increase connections with these segments that you're trying to re-engage. Digital advertising is one, social advertising one, smart emails another. There are a lot more other channels I'm not addressing because we're focusing on digital ads and email today. But even like phone calls or direct mail, like there's a lot of different ways to connect with your audience in these segments. But it's thinking about which channels are the right and then doing a blended mix. That was going to be my last note here, is that you don't want to settle on just one channel. So take, for example, if we say, hey, all the donors that gave in December, we are going to run social ads to them. If you run social ads and send emails and do retargeting on the page that you're linking them to, you're increasing the tapestry of connection points that you're creating with that audience. So moving from kind of like using a single dart to using a net. I'm trying to use like non-violent thing. I'm trying to think of an analogy that works, but it's like you're increasing your touch points. So it's going from like a mono sound to a stereo sound. So you're increasing the surround sound of those connection points, which is going to increase the likelihood of actually being able to activate them to where you want. Awesome. So don't just look at one channel for one segment. You would want to look at the audience and then blend channels together to have a multi-channel strategy to cultivate them towards giving a donation or signing up or becoming a member, etc. Last but not least, reach over relevancy, connection over conversion. So you want to increase the number of connections you have that are relevant. Conversion is important to measure because you want to learn through that. But when you're designing your cultivation campaigns, you want to focus on relevancy and connection. That's why we run multi-channel, and that's why we choose content that's relevant to our audiences, even if those segments are then smaller. So it's less convenient because it's not a spray and pray type approach, but it's more purposeful. And that's what we've seen work for organizations that we work with. And I've seen in my own work as I've done fundraising and growth for nonprofits.
No, tell me if I'm wrong here. Tatiana's asking about what software can help us do smart emails to people who start to donate or leave. Doesn't Feathr have that capability or do you have to sync with another email platform?
Yeah, so Feathr does offer this natively in our platform where you can do intent-based emails. We also offer another smart setting where you can, we call those auto sends in our like automatic emails. So, hey, they did this. Anyone who trips this wire, do this action. So they're like drip emails, sequences, cadences, however you kind of are familiar with them. The other Yes. Thank you, Tatiana. You've corrected my slide. Yes, it's relevancy over reach, not reach over relevancy. Editorial mistake on my part. Good call out, Tatiana. The other thing Feathr offers, is because a lot of platforms offer like auto send. So if you have an email platform today, I would highly encourage you to look at that platform and see if they offer it. If not, Feathr's a great option to not only do email, but to also run these multi-channel campaigns that we're talking about today. One thing Feathr does uniquely with email is we can do blended campaigns. So for example, I could say, send this email out this week, but if someone sees my ad, send them the email right away. Or I'm going to send an email, and then if they don't open this email, start advertising to them via ads. Or if they do open the email, start sending ads to them.
A bunch of if this, then that's.
You can create blended things that allow you to layer in channels to really provide that more surround sound view, leaning more into intent. Like they did something or they didn't do something, so I want them to see we're going to bring in the horns now, versus just sending in the flutes. So you're kind of having this orchestra approach is probably a better analogy. Last but not least, we want to activate and then learn. Activations about measuring and testing. We want to make sure that we're measuring our success. I got this text message from a good friend. She said, hey, we're talking about you today, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're thinking of sending a direct mail ask for joining a monthly giving program, but should we just ask for one time instead of end of year? Or should we ask for a one-time gift instead, since it's end of year is often more for one-timers? Or should we ask for monthly giving? And my answer was, hey, ultimately the answer is it depends. Helpful, right? The point I want to make here is that we don't know what ask is going to be the right ask until we experiment with that. So if I'm cultivating an audience that gave at the end of the year last year, it's better for us to run some sort of A/B split or run a hypothesis to learn from what is the right activation point. Is it best for us to get them to turn into a monthly donor right away? Is it best for us to ask them for an individual gift? Maybe it's actually best for us to invite them to a town hall with our executive director. Like the ask that you have to begin to increase, like once you have the cultivation and the engagement, knowing what to ask is actually really difficult, and it always depends. And so it's important to try different things. Just because you want them to become a monthly donor doesn't mean that that's the right ask to make to that segment at that time. And there are likely other asks or connections, that activations you can have with them that might be better, that deepens that relationship and allows you to cultivate deeper connection over time and ultimately drive towards what your goal is. So there's 3 types of tests. For the sake of time, I'm going to breeze over these, but again, we're going to share the slides. There are 3 types of tests. I got this from my good friend Brady Josephson, who runs growth and marketing at Charity Water. And you might say, Charity Water, they're massive. I can't learn anything from them. This is a testing framework that Brady's used like on a bunch of different organizations, small to mega. And so there's 3 different types of tests, and he puts words to it I think are really important. The first one is trying. So you could say, hey, we are going to try display ads. So you're testing new things and you have a lack of control. You've never done it before, and you're just trying to learn and benchmark results for future pilots or experiments. So we are just going to try this out and see how it works for us. The second is a pilot, which would be organized test of new things with a clear hypothesis on expected results, typically after a trying. Like, hey, we're trying these. Now we got some early results. Now we're going to organize multiple tests into a pilot, which is typically time constrained and has a clear hypothesis of outcome. Like, we are going to measure success against this variable. Let's say it's number of donations or number of signups or ticket sales within this time frame, and we're going to revisit this pilot once it hits its completion. The third type of testing is once you've had more of a mature program, which is experiments, where you're actually controlling variables and you're having more of that traditional like A/B test, where you're saying, okay, we're going to hold out group here and we're going to test changing the ad copy or changing the subject line of the email. But you already have to have a set of results to begin to experiment. A lot of the discussions around testing and nonprofit marketing fall too much on the experiment category. And I think it discourages people from trying and piloting things, which basically prevents you from ever getting to the ability to optimize for experiments.
So
three
true.
types of tests, and being clear which one you are is also a good communication tool for your boss, your leaders, your team, depending on what, and say, hey team, we are piloting this, or hey team, we are going to try this, or hey manager or boss or board, we are experimenting with an email against this segment in these ways. But you have clear language on what a try, a pilot, and an experiment are, and it encourages you to do more things so you can learn faster. Last but not least, a reminder, we talked about at the beginning, don't forget about acquisition. I'm going to share three ways you can use the learnings and the information you got from your end of year donors to acquire new donors. So there's three types of campaigns that I wanted to point out. The first one is lookalike audiences. This is offered both in display advertising and social ad channels, where you can use a current set of donors. So, wow, these are awesome donors from end of year. I can upload that list to either a platform like Feathr or directly to Facebook or another ads platform. And it's going to use that data from who you know about that to target them. There are other options that platforms like Feathr offer where you can actually do segmentation based on, I forget what the term is called, but like macro data sets. So there's all these macro data sets out there that say, oh, here's people that have, if you're familiar, let me back up. If you're familiar with buying prospect lists for direct mail, it's very similar. You can say, hey, I want to target people in their early career or mid-career with 3 kids, or like growing family household. And there's all of these common data sets based on magazine subscriptions, data that's rented. Like there's a whole world out there. You don't need to understand it, but there's these predetermined segments that you can choose to target. It's very similar to like what I think we've seen with social platforms recently, where it's like, hey, I want to target people that like dogs, but these macro data sets live outside of social media. And you can run ads against them as well. So if you know that your best donors fit a certain profile of demographics, you can then choose to target demographics that are similar or representative of that. If the hypothesis is that that these donors, other donors that look like this, would be wanting to get to our programs. Second one is geofencing, which is location-based targeting. This is super creepy, but it's very purposeful, and if done well, really important. So when you are in a location, you can run ads to people in a specific location during a specific time. So when you are in here, run ads to them. The other way you can run ads to people using geofencing is they were at said location, now target them afterwards. So I want to target people that visited the Save the Dogs Rescue Mission convention in Orlando, Florida for the next 4 weeks after they were at that convention. And so it's indexing mobile device IDs and other website traffic anonymously. And again, being able to feed that back in. So it sounds creepy. It sounds like magic. It's just purposeful marketing. Last but not least is keyword searching, which I already discussed, which is basically using keyword queries that people are searching for to then run advertising on the web against those queries. This works really well for so something like this, like Goodwill, furniture donation pickup. And now Goodwill's targeting them to be able to submit that.
This is also a great thing for if you're curious, just Google search and you can see how many people have been searching recently for said thing. And then you can maybe even start to really customize your keywords based on that. Like what are people actually searching for? Oh, okay, that's what we do. So then we can go ahead and populate those ads. And I love, Clindy just said, hey, Clindy, geofencing works. She said at a preemptive love event, we used geofencing for an Austin event. We had 10 new people show up who had never heard of us before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, geofencing is powerful. I think all of these for acquisition are really interesting to overall increase brand awareness, but also back to the point about relevancy. It's very relevant to the organization. The other thing that I think could be good for geofencing is if it's an event that could be tied to your organization or like-minded people are visiting this. Like if it's, I'm just going to make this up, if it's a music event and you are a theater, music, arts organization, these people naturally have an affinity towards music. So let me repopulate everybody who attended Austin City Limits. I'm just making that up because you said Austin.
Yeah,
But
that works.
Yeah, I want to be cautious of time. We've got about 7-ish minutes left, and I want to make sure we hit your case studies, and then we can pop into my Feathr account too.
Hey, Becky, I didn't see your comment. So that text was from Becky, who's actually on the call. So, hey, Becky, I'm glad you guys found an answer. Old colleague and awesome do-gooder.
Yes,
Check out the Adventure
awesome.
Project. Yeah. So last but not least, 3 reminders before we go. One is design a plan and use the framework to help design a campaign plan, but do it in pencil and keep a pink eraser close by. You want to have a learning mindset. Even though we're trying to craft campaigns and being really purposeful, you still don't know. And a great mentor of mine that I really look up to said, we should always assume we're wrong. Our job is to find out how wrong as quickly as possible. And I think that's super helpful to know because it gives you the agency to be okay that it's wrong. Like, totally wrong. It's okay. We don't know, and we're going to go forward anyways. Number 2 is that the ideal benchmark is always your own results. Someone asked about ad frequency. I always get asked about how many emails too much. Someone is going to ask about how many times should we post on social or how many different ad creatives should we test. I have no idea what the answers are. Best practices are best practices. They're not yours. And so always benchmark against your own results and use best practices as an initial guide to try something. And then last but not least, take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. A wise reminder from my good friend, Miss Frizzle, that I've been trying to follow every day. So thanks, everyone. And I guess last but not least, Feathr helps nonprofits really know, grow, and engage their audiences with easy-to-use advertising, email, and digital engagement tools. If you're interested in learning more about that, I guess what's the best way? They can, Dana, can they click on something or can they do like a thumbs up? What's the best way to collect that on this platform?
Yeah, I just put up a little like do more good with Feathr, request a demo. So you should be able to click that link and go through and fill out a demo. I'll follow up with everybody too, so you can get more questions answered specific to your organization about how the platform might work. Do you have, while we have a couple of minutes, I wanted to walk through, do you have that one case study? There you go. Yeah, I think these are fascinating. Can you talk through what happened with this campaign?
Yeah, so the Humane Society, I believe this is a Humane Society in North Central Florida. They were able to spend $300 on retargeting ads, and they boost online donations with a almost 2,000% return. And so I think this example shows that even spending a little bit of money, but having high relevance and knowing and understanding your audience can have big results. So they just ran retargeting ads against people that visit their donation pages or pages around that, and they were able to drive people. Now, there was a lot of other effort that happened to get people into that environment. And then the $300 they added on retargeting ads was just like the final thing that pushed people over the line. So it's not an all-in return on investment, because again, you spent emails, you had an event, you did all this. But
Right.
if you didn't spend that last 300, they wouldn't have gotten the results that they got, at least in the timing that they had. So they generated 129 donations with $300 in retargeting spend. So it's not super expensive, but it's just being relevant and really understanding the segment. And then last but not least, we worked with International Justice Mission. They spent $7,000, so a bigger budget, but they were able to generate $110,000 in return that were directly attributable to those campaign efforts.
It's a pretty solid ROI, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as all of the medical commercials say, like, results can't be guaranteed and your results may differ. And here's all the bad things about it. Again, your benchmark is the one that's helpful. I think I would just encourage, whether you have 300 or 7,000 to spend, it's just about trying. If you've already tried, run a pilot. But first and foremost, just make sure you're being purposeful about that with using the framework.
So smart. That's awesome. I'm going to, by the way, please feel free to ask questions. I'm going to go ahead and switch over just so you can see kind of the back end of what this looks like. So this is the back end of my Feathr account. And what I did was I ran what Noah was talking about. Let me see if I can get it to be, nope, doop, 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 doop. The right.
Looks good to me.
The right size. There we go. I ran a lookalike campaign. So this was acquisition. These are brand new people. This was a totally cold audience. This was me messing around. It only ran for, my goodness, I don't know, 4 days. It was just to like get something up to promote this. And then I'm going to continue running them because it was fascinating. 26,000 people were reached, 28,000 views. I spent just under $300. And I think what's really fascinating about this is I was running these ads to a quiz that I have for my podcast. So it was to just incentivize people to come check out the podcast. And so let me go. These are all the people. They have all these like fake names. This is why it goes, it's not like pulling in people's names and data for all the privacy settings. But these are all the people that came to the site. And these were my ads that I used. I created these totally in Canva. These took me a couple minutes. I am not a designer. They have their own design team, but Feathr provides the dimensions that you need. And I created these. And then what's cool is you can see like which ones are performing the best. And what was interesting, I mean, I do a lot of social ads. I think a lot of people probably on this call know that. And it is very rare to get a click-through rate. On Facebook, it's really good to get a click-through rate of 1% or higher. These was saying this is 2.75. This one was 11% click-through rate. It's crazy. So if I had ran this for a longer time frame, it would have been really interesting to see. But these ones are lower. This one was getting 7%. So this is kind of what Noah's talking about when it comes to testing. I would never know like which ad creative is going to perform the best. And then maybe the next time I do it, I'm like, okay, is there something aligned with this popping orange is working really well? This one was high. This one was high. This one was high. I'm wearing yellow blades. Like, is there a reason, a rhyme or reason for this creative working so well? And then I can go back and I can start to experiment. So it's always like tinkering and asking yourself these questions. But I just wanted to show you literally one sample of kind of the back end of what a report looks like. And it shows me the websites that people were on that viewed the ads, where people in the US are that are viewing my ads. Oops. So kind of all around the US. And I got explained the reason why it's like this big thing in the Midwest is if the location data is not accessible, they just put it in the middle of the United States. So that's why it's not like I have a bunch of people in whatever state that is, Oklahoma. I'm not sure where that is. But yes, A/B testing is amazing. Sarah, yes, there will be a recording. Any questions? Some people are saying I can't see either. Oh, interesting. Sorry, guys. Can you see now? That's weird. Noah, can you see what I'm sharing? Oh, I lost your audio. Are you mute?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I can see I'm seeing your Feathr screen.
Yeah.
Like your screen of your Feathr dashboard.
Oh, weird. You guys aren't seeing it? Let me try again. Let me see if this does anything different. How about now? I get loading bubbles. Well, that's not cool, Sam. Still like it's loading. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I will share some screenshots of this via email. Oh, you say yes now. Okay. Yay, you can see it. Okay, well, this is what I was talking about. So sorry. Okay, so this was the breakdown of the back end of Feathr and showcasing my views, the budget. It's giving me information on my clicks. I can see the websites. It breaks down kind of like the awareness of views to clicks conversions. Again, I ran this. My advice that was given to me was to run a campaign for a month. I ran this for 4 days. So do not glean all the insights from this, but it was a test just to be able to showcase how it works. These are all of the individual people. And then these are my ad creative. So this is what I was referencing that I created in Canva. So again, super easy. Downloaded these in Canva. I did not spend a lot of time making these. I'm not a graphic designer. Feathr has a design team that can help with these, but they did pretty well. This is what I was talking about with this banner ad, got an 11% click-through rate. And then the cool thing is once data starts coming in, this is my website. So 28,000 people have come through on my website since I uploaded data into Feathr, and it marks like who of these people are reachable. So 2 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago, how many times have they been on my page? Again, I don't know who these people are. These are all fake names. But for instance, I'm not sure if it's going to be instantaneous. I know we're over time. So if I go to my website and let's see if I can refresh this. Okay, it's not going to be super instant, but it will show, like I can tell who I am because I've been on my website a million times. So it's like yellow jackrabbit has been on your site 40 times. And I know like, oh, that's me. So yeah, I want to make sure I know we're at time. I will go ahead and turn my screen share off. It's very cool, the stuff that you can do. And it just takes your marketing to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I do think it's fair to offer as well is a platform like Feathr isn't designed for all organizations. So I will say we typically work with the organizations that are a little bit larger, typically like 1 million in revenue or more. However, some of the tactics and techniques you can still run natively in other platforms if you're just trying to try them out. However, if you're doing more campaigns or you're a larger organization, that's where a platform like Feathr as a partner can really be super, super helpful. But reach out if you have questions. Dana alluded to this, but we also have what's called Feathr co-pilots. And so our co-pilots can actually work alongside you, almost like a managed services support, where they can help you design campaigns, design ads, really think through the content and the channels you should be using to cultivate your segments. And so that is an offering we offer, especially if marketing isn't a staffed position or it's not a number one only priority for you, as many people wear so many different hats. And a lot of our clients take advantage of the co-pilot offerings.
Awesome. So good. Everyone, this has been amazing.
So thankful for everyone.
Yeah, so thankful. I see one last question from Megan. If you have any more questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Can MailChimp send auto emails when visitors complete a form?
I haven't used MailChimp in years, so I don't want to speak towards that. I would ask MailChimp. Yeah, I don't want to answer wrongly. So I just want to make sure that you get the right answer. Maybe I would honestly just probably search for it in Google. I'm sure they have a support article or something that references that. But
yeah, good call. Danielle, what native platforms would you recommend for small nonprofits with a single marketing manager?
Yeah, I think it depends on your budget and priorities. But like the Meta platforms, so Facebook and Instagram offer a lot of native offerings within them. Google Ad Grant is another one that you should be taking advantage of if you're qualified, which the qualifications are pretty straightforward. But that's another one I would highly recommend that you can do natively in the platform. And then as you build more like multi-channel campaigns or want to do some more of the advanced channel tactics that we mentioned today, that's where a platform like Feathr becomes a better fit to manage all of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Super helpful.
Amazing.
Thanks, Thank everyone for being here. Happy New Year.
I wanted to mention one thing quickly is even if you aren't interested in Feathr's platform, one thing that we do have, which that's fit for everyone, is what we call the in-flight briefing. So it's something that comes out every week, and it's designed for people that are really pursuing purposeful marketing at nonprofits. So I'm going to share the link to sign up for that. It's a free resource we offer. We highlight inspirational things and advertising examples, campaign examples. This week we talked about football and Valentine's Day and love. So definitely check that out. William on our team works very hard on that, and it's a great free resource. And then, if you're interested, feel free to book a demo using the link that Dina just shared.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. See you soon.